Morning, everyone. I'm Arthi Shaw, Senior Editor at the Holmes Report. Welcome to our panel on the future of PR. For those of you that are tweeting, we have a hashtag specific for this panel. It's hashtag FutureM_PR. I believe it should be rotating on these slides as well. So we have a very good panel here today. We have people from very varied professional backgrounds, which will bring varied perspectives. I will let the panel introduce themselves in just a moment, but I actually wanted to get a sense from you guys. How many of you consider yourselves PR practitioners? Okay, so cool. So quite a few. For among these, how many of you are agency side? Okay. So I'm curious, those of you that are PR practitioners, how many of you spend 50% or more of your time on media relations? Oh, wow, that's great. Okay. So, well, this should be an interesting discussion. There'll be something for everyone. So I will let the panel introduce themselves, and then we will jump into the discussion.
Thanks, Arthi.
Oh. Do you want to just grab that one?
Thank you. I'm Mark O'Toole. I manage the PR department at HP Agency. We're a B2B, mostly high-tech focused firm in Newton, pretty evenly divided between creative services and PR. I've been in the PR industry for about 16, 17 years now, and the first half of my career was in television operations and ad sales. So I came into PR with a slightly different focus and somewhat of a sales mentality.
Morning, everyone. My name is Brian Carr. I'm the VP of Marketing at Springpad. We're a mobile app that helps you organize and simplify your life. So I come at it from the mobile marketing point of view. There are 800,000 apps out there that Springpad competes against on a daily basis for mindshare. There are going to be 70 billion downloads of apps this year alone. So that means 10 apps are downloaded for every human being on the planet. So when you talk about PR and marketing in the mobile space, it's very competitive, obviously. So I can tell you in the past 5 months, Springpad's been named the MSNBC App of the Week, the ABC News App of the Week, Time Magazine Top 50 Best iPhone Apps out there, and on August we were on the Today Show as one of the best organization apps for busy parents. So glad to be here today and talk to you about how we achieve that with our PR agency and other methods.
That's good PR. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Annie Weisskopf. I'm apparently the third person in the panel who's actually in sales. I work for Digiday, which is a digital media company. We focus on brands, agencies, and publishers and help them to reimagine media in a digital age. My title is VP of Business Development. It's just a sanitized way of saying I want to sell you something. I have never worked in PR, but honestly, a lot of my friends do.
My name is Christian Megliola. I'm the Director of Public Relations and Social Strategy at Connelly Partners in the South End. I've been there about 4 months before that. I was at Reeves Communications for almost 13 years. Ran some great accounts, Boston Celtics, Mohegan Sun, New Balance, and had the chance to start at both the social practice and a video production practice there. And like a lot of people who are in PR have news background, as in TV news. Didn't realize there are quite as many people for the sales background, but I've already learned something in the panel, which is a good start.
Hi, my name's Tim Reeves. Good morning. I run the PR practice at Allen & Gerritsen, and come to our conversation today with maybe a little different background that will inform a lot of the thoughts I share with you. Started as a newspaper reporter. I was a reporter with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette in Pennsylvania. Then became the press secretary for a governor. I was Governor Tom Ridge's press secretary in Pennsylvania. Ran all the marketing contracts in that capacity, fell in love with the agency business, and so went to an advertising agency to run the PR practice there. Did that for 10 years. I acquired the agency, and we're in Philadelphia, and I recently sold my business to Allen & Gerritsen, and I run the PR practice for the combined agency. So a lot of the thoughts I'll ask you to think about come from, it's all about storytelling. It's all about identifying and crafting stories that otherwise would not be told without your efforts, but doing it in different capacities.
Great. So we will jump off so basically we have 5 broad discussion topics that we want to cover off today. So we'll spend about 7 minutes on each of those, and then we will open up the floor for Q&A. So let's just dive right in here with defining PR. So, I mean, in the truest sense, right, I mean, PR is about looking after a brand's reputation. But do you think that the industry has allowed itself to be defined too narrowly by media relations and publicity, and is it reeling from the aftermath of that, in this digital age where a much broader skill set is required? And actually, Brian, I was thinking maybe you could just dive right in, ring of fire.
Absolutely. I'd say PR has been rebranded, and I think in the past 5 years a term has come up that didn't exist 5 years ago, really, and it has actually taken over, I think, a lot of PR. It's called content marketing. If you look at any of the research and the data coming out of the content marketing industry, it is literally things that people of a certain age would say, wait, that's what PR is. For example, you look at some of the data that actually came out from the Content Marketing Institute, and there is actually an institute that basically has co-opted this term that basically says, of the 90% of the companies that say they do, quote, content marketing, 40% admit they have no idea basically what they're doing. But here's what they do, and they have 12 different activities. It's videos, it's posting blogs on their own site, doing guest blog posts, doing webinars, doing infographics is one of the... So they've listed all these activities that if you take a step back, it's like, well, infographics, is that PR or is this new thing called content marketing? PR has basically allowed itself to be co-opted by, I think, this industry called content marketing, and my argument would be content marketing is PR 2.0.
Sure.
Here's a cut at it that might be helpful. This has been valuable for me, and especially when you're thinking about PR in the context of the folks who do the bulk of the brand marketing still today, and that is advertising agencies. So advertising is a channel of complete control. The people who were born and bred in advertising love that. In advertising, you say exactly what you want to say, exactly the way you want to say it, exactly where you want to say it, exactly when you want to say it. The practitioners of that craft love it, and clients love it. The way clients are wired, that control is valuable. PR is defined so differently by so many. We all have different thought bubbles on PR. For me, the simplest way to think about it is it's the dark art of getting other people to tell those stories. And it's hard because you don't have control. No PR practitioner can go to a client or anyone else and assure them of a result precisely for that reason. We're trying to compel and incent and intrigue other people to tell stories for our clients that are going to be on strategy and valuable for that brand. It's harder to do, but when you do it, it's incredibly more powerful because it's not just us asserting about ourselves, it's other people, third-party credibility telling our stories. And so if you think about PR that way, and it's true in every channel, whether you're trying to generate those stories in social channels or through traditional earned media, that's the core idea behind it, and that's what's so valuable today because everything in communication, right, is about marketers losing control and needing to find ways to tell their stories. So when we do our jobs well, we've got a pathway in this marketplace that's incredibly valuable.
Arthi, I would add that we tend to disparage media relations, and it's still a core component. Maybe some firms do a lot less of it now because they're doing more creative services or content development or other brand-related activities. But I doubt there's a PR person in this room who doesn't have an impetus to do media outreach and secure media results. So for better or for worse, that lives within our industry, and it's still a really, really critical part of what we do.
Yeah, and just sort of adding to what Tim was saying, PR, we have kind of a tendency to kind of diminish the overall role in terms of what the media relations component is. And I think, Mark, you're essentially making the same point. The third-party endorsement component that you get out of anything is a little bit different than what Brian's talked about from the content marketing side. I mean, you do want to own and create your own content, but circling back to what Tim was saying, in PR, you never have control of your content. The second that you're sending an email or making a phone call or having a conversation with a reporter, you know that that message is going to be distilled by somebody else immediately. So I think that's why in this sort of new realm of how PR is evolving and how social has become front and center and a lot of that stuff, it's a very natural fit and it's very easy for us to slide into those shoes.
And I was actually going to say, I'm curious to get your perspective as an outsider.
Oh, I love being an outsider. Well, PR is definitely evolved or evolving, and that has a lot to do with the fact that this era is really defined by paid, owned, and earned media, so that really does shift the relationship. I work with a lot of clients in the ad tech space, and there's several PR firms, one in particular, that really goes beyond what you would consider the realm of PR in terms of making event recommendations, content recommendations, and the CMO of one of my clients has said that she looks at this agency as her brand advisor. Having said that, PR still has an image problem, and if you talk to editors, maybe one who might be in this room, they will tell you that PR is just trying to get them to write something that they have no interest in writing.
So a follow-up question on that would be, I mean, do you think that PR defines itself too much by its services and not enough by the value it brings to the table?
I'm not sure that's true. You know, different firms, there's, I just read a stat in the U.S., there's 7,000 PR firms. So, you know, virtually every single one of those has some different value proposition. And some, you know, especially the really small ones, the sole practitioners, the 2-3 person shops, tend to define themselves by services, right? I can execute these things for you. And I think as you grow and you get to be a bigger firm, strategy to some degree becomes more important, service level becomes more important, and, you know, tricky things like measurement and analytics and things like that really move to the forefront. So
we're going to cut this conversation off, and we're going to move to the next topic, which we've touched on quite a bit already. It's visual storytelling and creativity. And I want to open up this part of the discussion with a stat. So in our Global Creativity Index for the Holmes Report, we asked clients if they were happy with the creative capabilities of their PR agency. And 2 responses stood out. So 40% said yes, but they could do better. And about nearly 1 in 4 just outright said no. So I'm just curious, wow. So I'm just curious in terms of what are the barriers to creativity within the PR industry, and how can these be overcome?
I guess the question I would ask is, how are we defining the creative capabilities? Because creative is so broad. Is that in terms of the social content being developed? Is it in terms of coming up with the big ideas, or was it sort of left broad?
We actually asked participants to define creativity on their own terms, and I think the big idea was sort of what emerged most consistently.
I mean, I think bad PR has a set it and forget it mentality, and you know, I think to what Annie was talking about before, that that there's a perception that PR, what their mission is to get editors to write things they don't want to write. Well, then, you know, you're pitching the wrong editors, and you're not providing them with the kind of storylines that they want, and there is plenty of bad PR out there, and I have no doubt that there have been times where I myself have been guilty of bad PR, but when you're doing your job the right way, you're not doing that at all. You're serving up as a resource. I know that sounds kind of hokey and obvious, but anyone who has had any meaningful form of media relations and any meaningful media contacts would feel exactly the same way. And I mean, everyone up on this panel is, you know, gainfully employed, and I'm sure most of the people in this room are as well. So you must be doing something right from that standpoint. But sure, you know, bad PR suffers from a lack of creativity, without question.
Yeah, I think this the question helps me to make my pitch to you guys about my belief that the ideal platform for practicing PR right now is as part of what used to be called an advertising agency, but the mothership agency that has the lead role in stewardship of a brand, hopefully now highly focused on innovation. And the reason why I believe that's the best platform, it's inherent in this question. So many great PR shops are struggling, pressured by economics and their own aspirations, to have a larger role in the brand. But it's an uphill battle, because typically for the major marketers, they've got an AOR perhaps, or perhaps they have just a lead agency who in the client's mind has that preeminent strategic role in the brand, that preeminent creative role in the brand. And PR shops have no matter how talented they are, they've got an uphill climb in kind of winning turf that they don't inherently have in the client's infrastructure. When you're practicing PR within the agency that has that position, you're less pressured to, you're not going to be defined just by services. You have an overarching brand stewardship role, and it's a delightful platform to bring the power of PR to bear in that broader context where your creativity is more warmly received, right? Because you have that standing going into the conversation. We can talk more perhaps about that in other areas.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment as it relates to creativity, because creativity could be, really looked upon in terms of what it is that the agency is proposing and how thoughtful they are about it and how it's going to move your business forward. One of my clients ahead of this panel sent me a proposal that she had gotten from a PR agency. I don't know who it was. Names have been removed. But this entire proposal was all about speaker placement, earned media, and what I would consider, just an old school way of looking at PR. I was surprised that they did it. They obviously didn't get the business, but that showed just a complete lack of creativity in that case.
In my creativity horror story from the client side, I've had the opportunity to work with many agencies, and one in the past we actually told them, hey, we did a big release, can you tweet about it on your Twitter site? And what happened was they promptly sent it to their interns, which we knew because it came on the agency name _ interns Twitter account, right? Okay, so we know where we rank in the client base of that agency that I had worked with in the past. And so that was the first mistake. We saw that. Secondly, it was a Twitter account with that beige-orange egg that Twitter gives you by default. So obviously not an account they put any investment in or thought through or actually showed that we know exactly what we're doing, very few followers, et cetera. And three is they actually emailed us with, hey, look, here it is. Take a look at it. We did what you had asked, and it was, where is this coming from? So that's one example of where's this creativity that we're supposedly paying for. So.
Well, sorry, Brian, I actually have a follow-up question for you.
And it's still out there.
No, so you haven't been entirely sold on some of the visual platforms like Tumblr. Can you explain why?
Well, I mean, I'm certainly sold on a lot of visual approaches, right? So, for example, when we talk about creativity, one of the things we did at Springpad was, hey, we're an organization app. Let's own a month, right? And what month does everyone want to get organized in? Oh, it's January. You start. It's the new year. Let's own nationalorganizationmonth.com. So when I talk about how do we get the word out with 800,000 apps about what we really want people to know, you can organize here. We got creative in terms of let's get it out there, and we actually have 31 days of how you can organize your life. Your life is a hot mess. You need to organize your closet. Here's how to organize your dinner party for 6. All that. So we've got it all mapped out in a kind of a creative visual way, and we have to do a 2.0 for this January coming up. But just one idea of coming at it from not only a content, marketing point of view, but a good visual point of view, and get it out there. And what you do is you engage with 31 other people who would like to organize, and they're tweeting it out to their friends, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the type of creative thinking I'm talking about.
Mark, did you have a...
The challenge I see with PR firms, and so the firm I came from before I came to HB actually did a lot of creative work for its clients. There was a lot of image-based work, and there was video work, but we had to outsource that. We didn't have the resources to hire internal creative staff. So you lose a little control of the process at that point. You're on someone else's schedule, someone else's kind of budgeting parameters. And so the reason I came to HB was to have those things in-house, which is great, and it's still not always as perfectly smooth as it could be.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of similarities between what Mark, Tim, and I are experiencing, because I don't think any of our places would be considered traditional PR firms. I left Regan, which is the largest independent agency in New England, to go to Connelly Partners, which is truly integrated marketing. We have 16 or 17 different services that we can offer up, and I did that for a couple reasons. And number one, I love the culture of collaboration, be able to pull the creative directors in with the head of search, with the head of integrated production, and there's so many different stimuli for people in the PR world when you have that full range of different perspectives to come up with what are big ideas. And when I was at Regan, we had, I thought, a very good, solid social practice, but working at an integrated agency, and you could probably echo this, being able to have creative directors, art directors, and copywriters who are sensational at their craft come up with the most beautiful, compelling content possible is huge, and it really makes your stuff pop. And I do think that there's an increasing trend towards that approach.
So I'll give you the dark side of this point of view that Christian and I share, because you could rightly say to me, all right, Reeves, if you're making the case that a integrated agency is the best place to practice PR, how come that hasn't flourished? And that would be an entirely fair question, because it hasn't. Quote-unquote advertising agencies have struggled to have vibrant PR practices. And there's a reason, I saw it on the screen over there, Arthi, that PR agencies, pure play, are an $11 billion agency, or industry rather.
Globally, yeah.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. And that's because integrated agencies haven't done this well yet. Here's why, I believe. There's still a caste system in the traditional integrated agency structure, and there's a lot of really unproductive views as to the standing within integrated agencies. For PR to flourish, you need to have an integrated agency that truly has a meritocracy culture. That's the key thing for you to look for, is you're discerning different opportunities for yourselves. If you're dealing with old school folks, as Annie talked about, who see a copywriter, art director team as the singular best way to generate a great idea in the history of humankind, you're going to have trouble having an enthusiastically, genuinely given place at the table. On the other hand, if you have a culture, as I'm fortunate to have at A&G, where it's a genuine meritocracy, where there's not just a willingness or an openness, there's an eagerness to bring people from different perspectives together to let the best ideas rise to the top. That's where PR, in this notion that Christian and I are talking about, can flourish, but you need to really look at that culture, because there are a whole lot of great PR people who decided to hang their shingle with an advertising agency and did not have a good experience.
So Tim, we'll actually get back to that when we talk about integration in just a minute, but I want to quickly talk about, well, quickly-ish, talk about social data and analytics. This is a big one, and I want to start up this discussion with another stat, which is, and according to our World PR report, 63% of agency heads say their biggest investment priority in the coming year is going to be social media / community management. Now, on the flip side of that, you see organizations like Nike, for example, just this last year, pulling their social media management in-house to be kind of closer to the action. So, Christian, actually, I thought since you run the social practice at Connelly, it might be interesting to get your sense of why there are these two seemingly competing trends happening.
Yeah, and I think that will always be the case. And I think in general, we're always looking for what's the right answer. And I don't think there is a right answer. There are right answers. It all kind of steers into one's belief system. So you can make a checkmate argument for pulling your social in-house, and I won't make that particular point, but I'm sure other people could. The argument that I would make is because we are working on not just one brand at a time, the experience we have in doing social or PR or anything else that we're doing for a combination of brands makes us smarter about how to use everything. You could be working on a real estate client that can give you a great idea for something in travel and hospitality. So I think that is the argument for having social at an agency and having sort of a 1 foot in, 1 foot out approach to that need.
Well, I think that social really should be within the brand, within the company. And one of a CMO that I know I was talking to about this, she actually has her PR agency. There are folks from her PR agency that actually run their social feeds. And she said to her, it's ironic because she recognizes that it's all about authenticity, and so it should be coming from the brand itself. And so I actually do fundamentally agree with it. On the other hand, I was talking to another friend who's a PR agency, and she does run the social accounts for several of her clients because they just don't happen to have the talent in-house to be able to do it. But if it were me, I would find that talent and have it internally. So
I actually would like to touch on data now. And Brian, actually, I'm curious if do you provide your agency with the data that you glean from users to help them develop pitches, to help them develop any other content?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of a data-driven shop. We're run by MIT folks. So yeah, I mean, anytime they ask for data, we have plenty of data to share. That's for sure. So yes, we have the data. We know, so we're a mobile app, and we're also available on the web. We know exactly when to hit users. For example, we know at 7 o'clock tonight, between 7 and 8 p.m. tonight, there'll be 52 million people using apps on their iOS phone or an iPad, right? That's 52 million people, and we know how to target them through our own paid media and other campaigns that way. But it's 52 million between 7 and 8 p.m. on any given time zone. That's equivalent to the circulation of the 200 newspapers in the United States. It's also the ratings for the top 3 primetime television shows across for the week, right? So that's the audience we're talking about in 1 hour on apps. So now the challenge is, how do you reach that audience while they're engaged with other things? And the good news is there is plenty of mechanisms to do that. And from our point of view, it's a paid media play, and getting in front of them at the right time. When do you advertise to iPad users as opposed to the iPhone users? It's all day parting, things like that. So plenty of data. Do we share with the agency? Yes, but on broader terms.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like data in the past has primarily been used by PR agencies and after-action reports, oftentimes to justify spend. Are you finding that the PR industry is using data more in the planning stages?
Well, all right, I'll talk very quickly on the earned media math of years gone by, right? So for those of a certain age that may not know this, and one of the younger ones, like literally, if your story appeared in, say, the Boston Globe, or actually appeared on a morning news show, right, and your story was there, how it was justified was, oh, well, if you were to buy an ad at that time slot on the Good Morning America show, it would be, say, $100,000. So you've got $100,000 value. But because your app or your company or whatever was mentioned with a third-party endorsement of the host, we're going to add on, oh, it's actually more than $100,000. It's got a 3x that. So suddenly you'd get this earned media component that said, wow, that was worth a $3 million placement. So what's happening now is the data has now kind of crept into the conversation. Well, if I had $3 million to spend, I'd have 6 to 9 million downloads today. Things like that. So using data in the past was great. It kind of justified to your point, but now a lot of savvy marketers are looking to, the math is on their side, on the client side.
But at the same time, I mean, who doesn't want that spot on Good Morning America? And I think that PR has always had a tenuous relationship at best with metrics. I think anyone who practices it, that is one of the big frustrations. And we all want, particularly in the digital age where there's so much more data available, we want to draw direct lines to behavior as much as we can. And we should want that, and we should be in the quest for that all the time. But I am here to say that we will never come up with a direct line to every single behavior, no matter how advanced we get. And some of it is a belief system, and you have to have some faith in the art versus the science, and I believe in both, by the way, and I think that you've got to mind the science as much as you can. And not everyone feels that way. But we don't know everything that triggers behavior, so why don't you just come up with the best ideas possible, service them in as many ways as you can. Once you have that Good Morning America spot, you can repurpose that in 1,000 different ways, so it's even more valuable than the spot X3 that PR has traditionally used. So, viva the media relations component that came up earlier, because that stuff is more valuable than it ever has been, as opposed to less valuable. Right, Tim?
Yep. Yeah, that's very well said, Christian. No doubt data, we shouldn't lose the sight of the front-end value of data in PR. So sloppy PR practice is about casting stories out into the ether of public conversation and regarding that all have value or all have equal value. Data can help us when you're working from a strong strategic position to identify up front and agree with your client up front what storylines are going to be most valuable for the brand. That helps tremendously, because then Christian's point about the elusive metrics of exactly the quantification of that result, still important, but it's easier to make a value proposition. But it does get back to this notion, back to that point about the certainty that clients crave and the certainty that advertisers crave. PR fundamentally is a different art, and it always will be. We have assets, though, in justifying ourselves. There is a tremendous internal benefit to PR within a client organization. When a client runs their ad, that feels good. But when they see their brand or their story being told by third parties in social channels that they cherish, or in traditional media outlets that they regard as being reputable and of high value, there's a psychology within the client that happens as well too, and we benefit from that even if we're not quite as quantifiable on the metric side.
I have a question about what you just said. When you talk about having stories or information shared, right, authentically by your audience, and you just also talked about having, getting that page in the Wall Street Journal or whatever, getting that article. So is the value having something that is placed for free? You've earned it, right? It's not free. Well, it's not free. It's earned. It's earned. It's earned. Okay, it's earned. But my question is that. But if you have something that's paid content, right, and that gets shared more or interacted with more or commented more than that earned piece, how do you calculate the value of one over the other?
I would say all of the above. Let's go get all of that stuff. And I guess there's an appropriateness to blurred lines kind of being the song of 2013. I was at a media pitching event fairly recently where you're supposed to have access to editorial staff for essentially desk sides on speed. And 4 or 5 different people out of the 40 in that room were making a big push about we could do something paid that looks like it's editorial. I mean, these are people who are supposed to be on the editorial side, nakedly saying we want to mask it and basically deceive the audience into thinking this is editorial content. And that is a little bit of a paradigm shift that I think has happened in the last couple of years as everything has become increasingly blurred. And there's upsides to that, and there's downsides to it.
So actually, this might be a good place to veer into our fourth topic, and that's integration, because it sounds like that's the direction that we're going. And actually, a question that I have on that, and I'd like to get back to sort of the content marketing, the paid content marketing that you mentioned. But with integration, right, and Tim, to your point earlier, channel neutrality, that's the end goal, right? But the perception is that's very difficult in practice because the financial lure of convincing a client to do a multi-million-dollar ad buy is just far greater than a PR campaign for 100K. So, given that you ran both PR and advertising at Neiman, I'm just curious. I mean, was there always a temptation to gravitate towards the biggest spend?
Well, there is. There are economic incentives to do that, but this gets back to the advantage when you have that standing with the client already, the advantage, I should say, of having that, practicing PR from that foremost brand stewardship role. When your economics are in place, you really have a much better, genuine opportunity to go where the best opportunity is, where the best client opportunity is. If your economics hinge on selling through your channel, you're inherently biased, no matter how much goodwill you have. And that doesn't mean that your advocacy is inherently incorrect, but clients are onto that. They understand that. And that's kind of the unspoken infrastructure of the conversation when somebody who doesn't have that lead role in a brand is advocating. They see it as an economic push. Arthi, I'm going to practice good PR, and I'm going to tell the story I wanted to tell anyway, even though you were changing the subject. Andy, in answer to your question, I just want to tell you a 40-second story, but I think it'll answer your question, and you guys might enjoy it. So one of our clients is Monistat. That's a yeast infection cream. I am now totally comfortable talking about yeast infections. Yeah, there we go. Well, I think your math's off there, Andy, just looking at the room, but I get your point. We are the agency of record for Monistat. Anybody who's a fan of Glee, 2 weeks ago, one of the characters in Glee is now in New York, and she's trying to make it in the big city, and one of her opportunities was she did an ad for a fictional yeast infection product called Yeastistat. It was a play on Monistat, right, the category leader. So one of our big things as a value proposition now is the brand newsroom, and this is why it's so exciting to be in PR right now. We had, within 24 hours, with full client approval, and anybody who's ever worked for an OTC company, getting client approval quickly is a big deal. Within 24 hours, we had a press release out, an old school method, but a very effective one here, recommending that the character actually change allegiances and become the official spokesman for Monistat in Lima, Ohio, where Glee is based. The thing took off. It was all tongue-in-cheek. It was a quick play. We got hits all over the place on this thing. the client didn't even look at the metrics. They didn't care. We sent them a full report on the metrics. They loved that we were on Media Bistro. They loved all the different placements we got. But to see their brand ingrained in popular culture that way and hijacking popular culture for the purposes of their brand, that's the advantage we have in PR. That's energizing for clients. And our deficiency in metrics, our built-in deficiency, is overcome by a lot of. I'm sorry, Arthi.
That's.
If you get a chance to talk about yeast infections, you have to.
Why, I was actually going to ask you to talk about EPT earlier. Yeah, because Tim's agency actually represents EPT as well, and has a really good case study that you can probably ask him about later on that. Well, Mark, actually, I'd love to get your perspective on integration and how that sort of manifests itself at HB.
I was at about a year ago, we're part of a PR network, and I was at the global meeting, and there were maybe 50 other agency owners there. And I asked the question, I said, how many of you use the word integrated in the way you describe yourself or market yourselves? And 50 hands went up. And we started the exercise of going around the room and asking people to describe that, and we stopped after about the fourth person because it was either irrelevant or completely different, and it just would have been this exercise in hearing everybody talk. So it's one of those words that's wide open to interpretation. We have a client who is a mid-sized technology company. The CEO, whenever we see him, his biggest dream is to put a whole bunch of ads up in airports. You know, like when you're walking off the plane and you see the billboards on the walls. He can't afford that. It's going to be many years till he can afford that. He can afford PR right now. He likes the fact that he works with us because there's creative infusion into the PR, and then when he finally actually has the finances to do that, he knows he's going to get something consistent to the experience he's already been having. So, you know, it's often buyer defined. I know we're going to talk a little bit about buyer behavior, but integrated, regardless of how we as agencies or PR people define it, it's ultimately how the buyer defines it and what they want to buy.
Mm-hmm. So that is actually probably a good lead-in to the next chapter, but let's go back for just a moment to content marketing, and especially the paid syndication and distribution of owned content. How is that structured within your various organizations? Is that something that PR leads, or is that something that your media buying practice leads?
In our firm, PR leads it. We outsource our media buying. And you and I talked a little bit, Arthi, it's a challenge on our side because a lot of those services don't cater to the type of client we serve. So I'm dealing with pretty dense B2B companies, and a lot of these paid channels for some of the paid content opportunities Christian was talking about tend to be consumer or more broad than our clients would ever be interested in investing in. Mm-hmm. So there's opportunity out there if you're on the publishing side to open up opportunities for these companies as well.
Yeah, for us, because we try to be the integratedest of the integrated, there's something like that would fall in a hybrid of PR, social, paid, creative. I mean, you name it. It's for us, and I do think Tim raised a really critical element before. It's all about the culture that you're at. Not all integrated marketing agencies have the same ethos. So you better make sure you're at the right one, or whatever you're practicing is not going to get the seat at the table. For us, it really depends on who the client is and what components can we pull in. So I think that it can live in a little bit of each, but my guess is from a company-to-company basis, you're going to find different departments leading it and making the argument that they should be the ones who are leading it.
So let's, and quickly, and then we'll.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to address the issue of editorial content and branded content. At Digiday, there's an editorial team. We also have a team that's called the Digiday Content Studio, and that team is there and available for clients who want to pay for labeled sponsored content that's written in the voice of the Digiday reader. So it's a very clear separation. It's very clearly marked. They're both obviously really valuable, but certainly it's clear that there's a separation, and it's clearly marked as branded as opposed to editorial. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how much insight you have into this, but does that team work primarily with media buying agencies, or do they work with PR agencies? And does the client have the option to develop the content themselves, and then with I guess your approval? Great questions. So at Digiday, the salespeople own the relationship with the clients. We mainly work directly with clients, not agencies. No offense, it's better for me. But we do, the way in which we interact with some of the PR firms isn't necessarily directly, but as I mentioned, some of the PR firms that are really deep in with these clients are in all of their meetings, they're doing their planning, they're making recommendations for paid opportunities as well. In terms of if a client wanted to write something, no. If it goes through the content studio, they can direct the topic and the content, but it's definitely written by former editors, and so it's all our content if it resides on digiday.com.
And if you're in the studio, then you're not doing any of the earned editorial or any of the traditional editorial.
Totally separate. And same thing with events. We put on a lot of events. There's someone who's in charge of speakers from an editorial perspective that get on stage at the events, and all others are through sponsored opportunities and are labeled as such.
All right, so let's talk quickly about buyer behavior for a bit. Brian, you can get back to your point later. So Christian and Mark, actually, I'm curious in your past lives at more traditional PR shops, how often you ran into a situation where maybe you did pitch a prospect or a client on some big integrated idea, and then did the prospect or client push back and say, oh, that's great, but I really want you all to just focus on media relations. And how can we start to change that behavior? Because I hear that from a lot of PR agencies.
We did that quite a bit. We do it at HB. I did it at my former firm. The challenge wasn't so much coming up with big, good ideas, because we did and we do. It's where the buyer comes in for their interaction with you. So in my last firm, which was just PR, that's what they came in to buy. So sometimes big ideas, especially when they're spread across different disciplines, require a lot of investment. If they're talking to you about PR, they probably aren't coming in with that level of investment in their heads. So that becomes a challenge right off the bat. If they're coming in with a $150,000 spend in their head and it's a $500,000 campaign, that's not going to work.
I think Regan actually did a good job at that. It all there's so much, a key component of growing your business is cross-selling to your existing clients and convincing them to do more. I think it's a fairly common practice. I think it's a smart practice when you're just getting something in a burgeoning situation to go in and take less than you'd like to charge for something a year from now, just to demonstrate that you can do it. So if you have a few of those, and we did that at Regan with both our social and our video stuff, and over time we were able to upsell that stuff at a higher level, and Regan continues to do that well. And that is something that Connelly has done very well for a long time, and as we are adding additional things, we just merged with a game lab that we announced literally yesterday. So that is a whole other fun bunch of content that we can cross-sell, and being in the PR and social space, being able to weave in a PR and social component to branded games for a client. Wow, that's fun. That's another fun toy to have in our department, and that's I know that A&G does that very well too.
Brian, actually, I'd be curious to get the client perspective in it. What can agency folks do to try to convince you to spend more money?
It's interesting because I do absolutely agree on the media relations importance in the value of how do you get on the Today Show and the MSNBC app, and that's what we actually did at Springpad. One of the things I did is we laser focused our phenomenal PR team to do the media relations outreach. And I know Mashable came out with an article last week or so that said basically stop pitching reporters, only hit them with a pitch once. If they're going to do it, they're going to do it on the first pass or not. And I blanched at that because it's just the opposite. I guarantee you, to get the placements that we got, our PR team was on it with at least minimal half-dozen contacts with the reporters to keep that relationship going and things like that. So from that perspective, I totally agree on that. But part of what we did is laser focus on that. Yes, we can talk about Tumblr and social and all these other things, but no, right now we have a core competency internally. We'll do our content marketing. Let's not try to branch off and get too sporadically. Focus on these things, and that's what worked for us. So, and that's been the win for us, is to focus the team.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that an agency could do, not necessarily your agency, to convince you to spend more money or to experiment with new platforms?
Yes, so that's the word you used, experiment, and you used the term, let's test it and let's do it on a lower level spend and do it that way. So in an answer, no, because I'm not in a position where I want an agency to learn how to do this on my dime, right? To your point, if it's, hey, we're just experimenting, maybe it's a freebie or, it's heavily discounted, let's do it together. We are your partner, we can do videos better than anyone else because we already know halfway there. That would be enticing. But but when I find out, or any marketer finds out, oh, we're your test bed to figure out how to use Twitter because I know because you haven't even updated the icon on your Twitter account to help us out. It's just not on my dime at this point.
Yeah, and if I were in Brian's shoes, I would feel the same way. That's why I think you have to do that with existing clients that you have a particularly good relationship with and who have faith in your vision and are willing to kind of learn along with you. Because if you're not willing to take those chances and try to expand in different ways, as the lines become increasingly blurred in everything we do, somebody is going to outbid you because they do more than you do, or they do things better than you do, and you never want to be in that position. So you've got to, from where we're coming from as an agency, you have to do everything. You have to do it at a very high level.
Here's the another way to do it that has been just delightful for us. And if you think about our industry, we stand alone, and this is changing, but still true. For every other industry, the notion of investing in R&D is a routine course of business. In our industry, investing in R&D wasn't even a conversation until 7 or so years ago. One of the smartest things we did was to create our own R&D unit, brand it, and really put serious resources behind it. And it's precisely for this point, because marketers, the point about them not wanting to pay you to educate yourselves is right on, Brian. And the way we talk about that is that if we're only doing the work that our clients have for us to do today, we, by definition, will not be able to lead them on the work they need to be doing tomorrow. We need to be doing that work right now on our own dime, trying things, failing, learning all along. And here's what happens when you do that. When you go to clients with those aspirational pitches, you have that pedigree, right? You're able to say, we know this will work because we've done it on our own dime. It's a wonderful cue for them to see that you're investing in that space just like the R&D space, just like they do. And then here's the bonus, the best thing for talent recruitment you'll ever do. Because when the best thinkers in innovation see your place as a place where they can experiment and be doing these tomorrow's projects, you'll be able to attract talent like you haven't been able to attract before. So there's always situations, as Christian and others said, where you just have to lowball something to get in the door. But it's really smart to spend that money instead, or not instead, but also think about spending that money in R&D.
And that's one of the things that Connelly does, and one of the things that attracted me to go to Connelly Partners is that their audience intelligence up front before an idea is hatched, and their analytics after an idea is out in the marketplace are so sophisticated, and there is less of either of those things in a traditional PR environment. And to Tim's point, those are just essential things. So if you have the ability to invest in all those things, as Connelly has, and as I know you guys do, and a lot of other smart integrated agencies, that really does help sell in the client on all these things.
I'll try to do it 5 words. We will be the preeminent fact-based deadline storytellers. The preeminent fact-based deadline storytellers, and everything's cutting our way to be that. It's all about topicality. It's all about moving fast right now, right? In order to be relevant in conversations, you got to move fast. People with PR pedigrees are really good at that. So many people who supervise storytelling on the brand side, if they don't have a kickoff meeting and a project manager that gives them a 4-week timetable, they're very uncomfortable. All the headwinds are at our time right now are about telling really good stories fast and fact-based stories, not just the emotional resonant chord that brand marketing so often rightly seeks to hit, but identifying, seeing, and seizing the facts of the day that can propel your brand. So preeminent fact-based deadline storytellers.
I get it. Sorry. So great question. The term I heard today for the first time is branded newsroom, which is a good one. Content studio. I can tell you from the client side, there are job descriptions out there, and you should look it up, for a chief content officer. right? And if you looked at it, it's like, that's kind of what PR is, isn't it? It's talking to journalists, getting leads and things like that in. So to your point, in 10 years, what are we calling ourselves? Or what is, it is not, I don't think the term PR. I think PR has a negative connotation. It's going to remember that spin. It's because it's all about spin. It's all about genuine, being genuine. And whether you're the chief content officer, what that means, it's just that you're not a PR person, but you really are.
Thank you. Thank you for teeing that up for me. I appreciate it. So, no, I was going to say, PR, I agree. It's got a negative, kind of a negative connotation. And when I tweeted about this session, and I just tweeted, PR is marketing's future, and a Brahmana wrote back, and he said, no, it's all about native experiences. And I asked him if he was talking about engaging with native experiences, and I asked him if it was about engaging with native ad units. But what he wrote back was, engaging in terms of creating meaningful digital experiences for users to enjoy the time they have and are spending with your brand. Well, that's exactly right what PR does, but that's not what he views as PR or should be doing.
So are the Rolling Stones a blues band or an R&B band or a country and western band? I think every answer that was put up here is perfectly fine. The Rolling Stones are a rock band too, right, ultimately. So PR doesn't need to have one definition. And I know a lot of people think it has a negative connotation. I disagree, but I'm coming from a PR person's standpoint. But if you want to call it something else, yeah, that's cool. I just want to come up with great ideas and get attention for your brand. So,
Christian, that is a great point to end things on. Well, thank you all very much for coming today, and I'm sure the panelists will be around for some questions.